Okay. All right. So, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Open Applied Linguistics Reading Club. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, Open Applied Linguistics Reading Club is a regular event of Open Applied Linguistics, which is an international research network affiliated with ILA, which is the International Association of Applied Linguistics. Now, the Reading Club is dedicated to introducing and promoting discussion on the essential readings related to open scholarship in applied linguistics. Today, we're going to talk about a paper by Professor Emma Marsden. You can see the information on the slides I'm currently sharing. The paper is entitled Doing the Right Thing to Get Diamonds, Professional Challenges and Moral Dilemmas, which is published in the Dutch Journal of Applied Linguistics, which is a Diamond OA journal. Now, if you have attended our previous events this year, you will know that the selected readings are all part of a special issue on Diamond OA publishing. And the paper we're talking about today is a response paper to Adringa et al.'s paper called Diamond is a Scientist's Best Friend. You can check out the entire issue on the journal website, which is completely open and free. Now, our session will be composed of two parts. In the first part, I'll ask Emma a couple of questions regarding the paper. In the second part, we'll have a live Q&A where all of us can engage in an open discussion. Now, please feel free to turn on your camera and mute yourself to chat with us directly. As I've already mentioned, we will be recording the session. So if you prefer, you can also just type in the chat any questions or comments you may have. Now, before we get started, let me first do the honors to introduce our invited speaker today, Professor Emma Marsden. Having taught French, Spanish, and English as foreign languages in schools in England and in Chile at the start of her career, Emma Marsden is currently Professor of Second Language Education in the Department of Education at the University of York in the UK. Emma has authored about 70 peer-reviewed publications in areas of language learning and teaching and open scholarship. She directs the open research repositories iris database.org and oasisdatabase.org. And from 2015 to 2012 was associate editor and then journal editor of language learning. Between 2018 and 2023, she directed the National Center for Excellence for Language Pedagogy, which is ldpedagogy.org. Now, with such an impressive background in language education and research, we're truly honored to have Emma with us today. Hi, Emma. Welcome.
Hi. Hi. Thanks very much for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you. So let's just dive right in then. So my first question is kind of the obvious question. So could you tell us a little bit about your response article and what motivated you to write it?
Sure. Okay. Well, Siebele asked me to write it, so I was invited, and I wanted to support his mission and the mission of his co-authors. I, like them, see it as one of the most difficult problems in that research in general, not just our field, is facing. In my role as journal editor, you will have been able to pick out from the article. I felt quite conflicted at the time and still do feel conflicted because I was aware that it was not a platinum model of publishing. And I can see both sides of the argument. And I suppose I took the opportunity to try and well, it's quite cathartic writing the article personally, actually. It allowed me to work through some of those conflicts, some of those tensions. Also, I work with a lot of fantastic early career researchers, which is why I am able to publish so many articles. And working with those early career researchers does bring up some of these problems about where we should publish and what the right thing to do is, that conflict between knowing that platinum journals are probably the right thing to do for the field, and yet they're not always the right thing for early career researchers at the point of needing to publish. The other reason I wanted to contribute was that we've just, in the last year or two, whenever the Isla Wren network began, we started accepting postprints on Iris. And again, postprints are all very well. They're one route to achieving open access, but they also perpetuate some of the problems, which I go into in my response piece. They perpetuate some of the problems in that they can increase citations to the very journals that are perpetuating the problem of not being able to launch platinum journals. So by increasing the citations to those journals, preprints and postprints, then increase the sort of hegemony, the power that these journals have over the citation indices. Yeah, so none of the problems are easily resolved. And I suppose it was an intellectual challenge for me to try and grapple with them and support Andringer's and et al.'s mission.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that summary. I really appreciate, I think a lot of the readers do as well. I really appreciate sort of the honest conversation, about the challenges, the conflicts, or the dilemmas that you face in publishing. And also you mentioned like for a lot of people like the alternative model, like the gold OA or just closed access journals, they're still like the mainstream and they have like high impact factor and things like that. And so I would imagine there are a lot of sort of obstacles to moving from the hybrid mode to the diamond or platinum, OA mode. So I wonder, in your opinion, what do you see as the biggest obstacles to moving from, the conventional mode or the dominant mode to diamond OA?
Okay, good question. Okay, the biggest obstacles, there's a few, I think. One is the fact that publishing is at the very core of what we all do. It drives our livelihoods, and so um, it's integral to our whole professional identities. Um, and the model has been entrenched over decades now. So it's a really, really deeply entrenched in all aspects of what we do. So extricating ourselves from that is going to be really hard, I think. Um, that doesn't necessarily answer the question, but I think so. The fact that it's very entrenched is one of the biggest obstacles. I think the fact that the big publishers have dominance over the citation indices is the other major obstacle, because like it or not, whether we think it's right or not, the most efficient way we have at the moment of evaluating quality of articles, whether we like it or not, is we use journal citation impact factors, many of us. And I think that's a really hard thing to pull back from. Alternative models that I propose in the article, like giving ourselves time to evaluate articles for themselves without looking at the journal impact factors, is the ideal scenario, but I'm not sure our research infrastructures yet give people time to do that. So when we internally evaluate research or externally for jobs, and we don't necessarily have the time to get the right expertise on the panels to judge all the individual pieces of research on their own merit. And it's really hard to do that if you're not an expert in the field. So it's like it's a proxy, it's a quick way of getting to some quality indices. And we really need to find alternative ways of doing that. And I should say, also allow new journals to start that can get on the citation indices measures, so that they're proper competitors for the big journals. The big journals have dominance over these citation indices because they've been around a long time and they've got all the networks to market their products. Yeah, so economic models of publishing are very well entrenched, just going through my notes. So the two sort of models of journals that are out there, one is when they're not owned by a publisher, like language learning, foreign language annals, modern language journal. They're owned by associations, and they could, in theory, flip to be platinum models. But in doing so, they would lose a lot of revenue, and that revenue is used for bona fide research purposes. It's used to fund the teams that edit these journals, that proofread them, that make them reach a really high quality of not just aesthetics, but the argumentation, the provision of statistics, and the reporting, the argumentation, the editorial team are supported in all that by some of the revenue that Wiley raise for us. And they also give, certainly in language learning's case, they give grants, they give dissertation grants and early awards to early career researchers, which are really hard to get for a lot of early career researchers. There aren't funding streams dedicated to early career researchers. So there'd be a cost if we moved away from Wiley, we wouldn't be able to have those funds. The other kind of journal that's out there are those that are owned by publishers. So for them to become platinum, they would have to move their editorial boards and change their journal title because they're under contract with a publisher to produce a journal with a certain title, and the publishers own that title. So in order to flip, they have to have a unanimous view on this across their editorial board, all move to keep the prestige, to keep the reputation of that journal, and change their journal name. And there are a couple of examples in the field where journals have done that, so it is possible. But I would just like to flag one positive development that we've seen, which is Cambridge University Press have been now sort of distributing the income from the fees that they get from publishing articles, open access. And they are now saying all our articles are going to be open access, because if you can't afford to pay those publishing fees, then we will get the funds for you. And they're basically redistributing the fees that are taken from the wealthier countries, and then allowing people to publish or everyone to publish open access. So it is possible to end on a more optimistic note.
Yeah, again, I really appreciate all the sort of the insights into the practicalities of flipping a journal. So it almost strikes me as sometimes we know what's the right thing to do, but it's really hard to really, do that right thing, to follow our own principles. And I really like, quite a few points that if I can follow on, if I may. So one of the things that I really appreciate that you mentioned about the sustainability of the OA model, which is definitely crucial. I think a lot of people, they may not be aware of this. Like if they work in a sort of wealthy institution, their university already signed the contract. So it's just, sometimes the process is even automatic. They don't even realize, oh my God, a huge amount of fee was actually being paid or covered during this process. And for me, I had that firsthand experience when I moved back to, I used to sort of do my study in Cambridge when I was publishing. While I was a Cambridge PhD student, I was benefiting from that contract. So I didn't realize I could just, afford OA publishing. But then when I moved back to China, like most, universities in China, we don't sign those kind of contracts. So the OA fee becomes like, I become sort of more aware of how astronomical those numbers are. It's like they're really unaffordable, even for, even if you have research funding. So of course, that's a for business model. But as you say, even if we slip to Diamond OA, there is still a cost, like a real cost involved in that. And it almost feels like maybe we need to start thinking about new business model, like not really for profit business, but rather like how do we make everything sustainable, and so that we can have some extra money to, to cover the labor of the, the copy editing, or to have some, scholarship for early career researchers, or, from researchers from the global south and things like that. So I wonder if you have any maybe sort of suggestions for, like how maybe there is no sort of easy answer to that question, but can we really do that? Like, can we like have, like both? Yeah.
Yeah, what's the economic model? A good example is Studies in Second Language Learning and Teaching, SLLT, run by University in Poland. And the University in Poland pays a small amount of money, which gives them access to, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn here, but I think it gives them access to the platform that they use for all the journal business. Or indeed, they may even use a free platform for all the journal business, but they need a small fee to give some recompense to the editors themselves, or to the copy editing, or to the proofreading, something. But it's supported by the university. And that may be sustainable if the university sees some benefit in it, whether it's reputational or academic quality, or they're sort of they themselves have some certain targets for engaging in international journal publication or something. It may be that groups of universities come together. So where I am, there's a little cluster of universities called the White Rose Group, and these are universities across the north in Yorkshire. And we have a publishing house, and the Eurosler Journal flipped from a John Benjamin's to publishing with the White Rose Press. But there is a small fee associated generally with each article. Occasionally, the professional association, the Eurosler, actually give free publishing sort of offers to people through sort of competitions or awards, or but generally there's a small fee, but nothing like the astronomical ones that you're talking about. So I think, and the third one, so the ones I've covered are a university, or secondly, clusters of universities joining together. And the third one is professional associations, whereby through our membership fees, we are paying for some of this service. So the online interface, the proofreading, the copy editing. Yeah, and also, as I wrote in my article, I think we will have to accept a lower standard of aesthetics. So there may be a few typos. What we don't want is academic errors. We don't want issues with argumentation or statistics. And that's where my worry is if we don't pay anything for the service of copy editing and careful editorial oversight, I feel like academic errors will creep in, which will lower the quality. But in terms of pure aesthetics, we can survive as a discipline, I think, if the font isn't quite as we want it, or there's a few typos here or there. So I think that's the probably has to go hand in hand with those different models that I was outlining. We have to lower our aesthetic expectations, I suppose.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I guess it is exactly like you said, like this is so deeply entrenched that we're already so accustomed to the professional copy editing, or maybe sometimes the speed of the turnover. But when it comes to, Diamond OA run by a small team, like on a limited budget, then things may have to, sort of go more slowly, or, like you say, lower sort of aesthetic standards. I think maybe now is a good time to actually open the floor to the audience to see how they feel about this. I mean, we're sort of in this publishing world every day, and I'm curious to see if our audience has any sort of comments, responses, or questions for Emma. So again, you can just unmute yourself and speak directly, or you can. We also encourage you maybe to switch on your camera. Uh, and alternatively, you can also just type in the chat. I think maybe we can give people a couple of minutes for them to sort of think what they want to ask. And in the meantime, I have a million questions, I guess. I'm gonna follow up on another point that you just mentioned. So actually, in the previous event, Luke mentioned this about as well about CUP flipping journals, which is really exciting news to us. And also, the thing you mentioned is like all made sense. Like they're redistributing, the fees, or actually sort of narrowing the gap between the sort of more wealthier institution, well-funded, and the less sort of or under-resourced institutions. But then again, I wonder what would happen when it comes to the date when they renew the contract. Like the big universities, they see that, oh, actually we're just covering for everybody else. I'm just wondering whether that's gonna impact their willingness to continue, like paying the huge amount of fees to for this. I don't know. Again, I don't have enough insider knowledge, but I wonder what's your thoughts about that.
No, I too worried about that if it happens a lot, I suppose. I mean, mainly the deals are struck on governmental levels, I think. I think that I know in the US it's more institutional, But in the rest of the world, it's at government levels where they sign big deals with publishers, or at least high-level jurisdictions, not just single institutions. So my hope is that surely no one would dare go, oh, because now we're basically sponsoring some institutions in Africa maybe that haven't got the funds to fund open access publication. We're now going to withdraw our deal. It just sounds so something that could be self-harming their own reputation so seriously but I suppose they could do it without admitting the reason. What I actually think is that the numbers will be quite low at the start anyway. So in any one issue of a journal or any one volume of a journal, there won't be a lot of authors that don't have access to the funds to pay for open access. And so it will be a very gradual change. And there are all sorts of reasons why I think that, but which are related to the vicious circle of the knowledge economy. You know, if the people who are able to submit articles of a quality that are able to get through the review process are unfortunately from often institutions where they can afford the open access. And there's a reason for that correlation. And that's what we want to break. But I think it's going to take quite a long time to get there. And I'm hoping that it won't be so sudden that people who have these deals suddenly withdraw from them because they see that other jurisdictions or continents are getting benefit from it. I'm just hopeful that goodness of human nature would prevail, and they wouldn't want to admit that they're withdrawing from the deal.
Yeah, that makes
I
sense.
saw June Lan had her hand up.
Yeah. I saw that too. So yeah,
Oh,
Julian, please speak.
oh,
Hi, Emma.
hi.
Thank you. Well, I think I would like to speak as early career researchers, and here I particularly appreciate your understanding of the you mentioned this catch-22 situation where we need to publish in high impact journals for career progression, yet this might handle the shift towards diamond open access. So my question is, are there any specific opportunities or strategies that you can see for early career researchers to actively contribute to and benefit from the move towards diamond open access?
Hmm. It's really tough. I've been asked this question a number of times by early career researchers, and there are now open platinum journals that've got high impact. And studies in second language learning and teaching is one of them. We saw this year it shot up the citation index, so it is possible. And I think perhaps one strategy would be to pester your senior colleagues, in my case, me with you, but we've had this discussion lots, but you're in a position to put some pressure on the people that you're working with to say, can we publish in a platinum journal? Because one of these vicious circles that we're trying to break is that if the more senior colleagues do publish in these journals, it does have an effect of increasing citations of that journal. And so the more the senior colleagues do that, the more this can contribute to improving the situation. One thing I did suggest in the article is that we need some kind of consensus in the field about which journals we're going to lend our support to, not just in terms of authors, but as reviewers and as editors, because there could be a fracturing, a dilution of our efforts if we see, 15 platinum journals have all now come out in the field of applied linguistics. We, as a field, it would be good to get behind a small number of them, because it's going to be quite slow and require a lot of effort from people. So if we focus our efforts on and ones that are already doing well seem like a good way to go. Yeah, I don't know whether I have any more advice. No,
Thank
I
you
don't
very
think so.
much. Thank you.
I would, can I hope you don't mind me doing this, Ben. I can see Ben Cat here, who is I let him know that I was giving this talk. Ben is one of our librarians at the University of York who's an expert in open access publishing and open science generally, but I may now have but I just wondered if he had anything at all to offer to the conversation, because I'm sure as librarians you're so aware of what the publishers are up to, really, and that they're just, one example was when I let a publisher who I was working with know that no, the publisher, what was it? The publisher, that was it. The publisher stopped giving free read access to certain articles because they knew that libraries were trawling and finding if anything was open access and free to read, that was one criteria for libraries withdrawing their subscription. And I saw that Wiley was doing this, and so withdrawing its free to read content and let the library at York know about this. And I don't think it was you, Ben, but someone at the time was quite kind of surprised, horrified that this was happening. So I just wondered if you're able to give us any insight, any advice, for example, that Julian Pan was asking for early career researchers.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, at York, it's the case that we have an open access finance group that looks at things like big transformative agreements with publishers, but also these diamond initiatives, and they're supported directly by the library. So I suppose what I would say to ECRs and to authors in general is that you can also pester your library. You can recommend different journals that have a diamond model, and in our case, if there's a good case for it, then yeah, we can consider supporting it using library funds. Um, and I was just going to point out, I don't know if anyone on the call is familiar with the Linguistics in Open Access Ling OA initiative. I'll put a link in. Just as an example of this is something that we supported through a JISC agreement a few years ago, and it's a collective effort. It's four journals in linguistics that have a diamond model, um, and put out this call for funding, and so we were able to pledge some funding to support them. So yeah, I'd say also these collective models are a good way of yeah, combining effort and uh, yeah, making sure that libraries get to hear about these things as well.
I was wondering, because one of the powers that the big publishing houses have is that they have these huge marketing networks. So if a journal goes solo, it's quite scary for them that they're not then going to get the massive power of Wiley behind them, or Sage, or whatever, of their marketing networks, and that therefore they would drop off the subscription lists of libraries, university libraries across the world. But I was thinking it can't be that hard for us to get a list of all the university libraries in the world. It may be out there, or you may have one, or so how hard would it be to get that list of contact to persuade university libraries across the world, say, look, this is the same journal, it's just under a different name now, it's just lost its publisher.
Yeah, I think it is a struggle to get that message out, because yeah, you might not find out about these things unless you were, keeping an eye on Twitter or whatever. But I'd say that the role of so in the UK we have consortia like JISC, which is a purchasing consortia for libraries, and I think we really rely on them to an extent to communicate these things. And and of course, yeah, as you were saying, at York we have the connection to the White Rose Press and the journals that they have as well. But yeah, again, I think we rely really on academics having that conversation with their librarians and letting us know what the latest changes are, and if there are other titles that we should be actively supporting.
So, do you think there is a list of university libraries somewhere, or is there you said, is there one central place that, say, a journal was going to flip, that they should let that place know, and then all the university libraries around the world would know?
I can't think no, I can't think of a central point of contact.
Yeah.
Um,
But
but
that is one of the things that scares journals, is that they will lose
mm,
that. So if we had an easy way of just of at one point of contact where journals could say, we flipped, can you please host this journal now, not call it that one anymore.
mm,
I don't know
yeah,
if
I
there'd
see
be a
what you mean.
consortium that we could, maybe that's something for that Isla Wren to try and um build a list of university libraries.
Yeah, we're certainly happy to help with, whatever, might be useful in this process. Yeah, I think have a sort
Yeah,
of central hub of information at least would be, helpful so that people at least know where to look and then they
yeah.
can recommend to their own libraries. But though I have to say, like, yeah, the libraries, they need to have that kind of, funding in place in the first place to be able to even decide like which one do they want to, So I think a lot of the university, maybe I don't know, but from my knowledge, I think a lot of the universities in China, they don't have a lot of subscriptions. We often run into paywalls, and when it comes to OA publishing, it's rarely like automatically covered, that kind of thing. And it usually has to come out of the researcher's own pocket, even from either from the own funding or like really personal like pocket. So that would be I don't know. So that's I think a lot of sort of barriers to overcome. Um, but then again, yeah, I'm conscious of the time. So I know you have a busy schedule. I must delay you any further. But maybe before you go, just one last question. We do have one question in the chat.
I
Um,
saw it from
oh,
Atsushi. Yeah,
yes. So do you want
yeah,
to?
it's a good question. Yeah, so having a postprint outlet on Iris with a DOI is such a great idea. Thank you, Julian and the Iris team, for this initiative. What are your thoughts on publishers that don't allow us to share the postprint until 2 years after publication? So there are some journals that you're not allowed to share the postprint. I mean, language learning was 12 months. We negotiated it down to 12 months. But other Wiley journals, it's 24, some it's 0, some it's 12 months, etc. Okay, my advice, don't know who's in the audience here. My advice is that as an author, you take your preprint up until the very last moment that you possibly can, and you keep making your preprint available, because it's a preprint until the moment that you get that acceptance notice, until that formal email that comes through with your article is now accepted. Until that moment, it's a preprint, and no publishers, as far as I know, no publishers stop you making your preprint available. So you can, that does mean that Iris can't host it if it's officially called a preprint, but you can put it elsewhere. And it can be the very latest version after the reviews until the editor sends you that final acceptance, and that preprint can be made available on OSF. And then as soon as your postprint can be made available, then please host it on Iris. I think we're yet to think around, and Amber's on the call, she's now working with me on Iris. We're yet to think around a way around that so that we can host the very last preprint on Iris. And because what we aren't so keen on doing on Iris is hosting any preprint that might never see the light of day, and it can become quite a messy database then. So ones that that are going to be accepted, that just getting those final tweets in the last moments, those are the kinds of things that are preprints but almost postprints.
Yeah, that's a really smart strategy. I'm definitely using that. So to make use of that window, yeah, of proof of copy editing, basically, to yeah to get your your manuscript out. Yeah, that's really good advice. Yeah, and thank you so much. Again, I'm conscious of time, but I think we had a really productive session. And thank you again for being with us and for all of your insights, and also for your colleagues for for joining us and sharing some insider knowledge. And yeah, and thanks to everyone in the audience for joining us for this enlightening conversation. Thank you all again. We'll be sharing the the recording on YouTube channel soon, so please check it out if you're interested. And also, please stay tuned for our upcoming events. We still have a couple of more coming. That's also part of this special issue. So just stay tuned. Yeah. Okay.
Thank
So
you for the invitation. It's great to be
yeah,
here.
yeah. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.